Back on MorningLine, thanks for joining us on this Thursday. Again, Talking Broken, continuing our coverage of what's happening with juvenile crime in the mid-state area, and our series Broken, which is airing, through our I-Team. And with us this morning to talk about an organization, Epic Girl, which helps girls at risk in this situation. Stacia Freeman's with us. She's the executive director of Epic Girl, and Andrea Hancock, outreach coordinator. We've got Bob waited through the break. Let's take a call from him. Hi, Bob. Good morning.
Good morning. I was just wanting to point out, the federal government appointed like $700 million in just one place. These places would be open and running. Even maybe some of the hospitals they've closed, they got some of that money, or the money that they're supposed to get.
That's right. He's talking about the TANF, and there have been news stories recently about this money and why. Would that money have helped you guys?
Yes, obviously.
And will
yes.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, it would help a lot. I mean, it's nonprofits hard. We're all competing for a lot of the same funding, and I really feel like there's an important role that we play in partnering with the Department of Children's Services that helps hold them accountable, take some of the load off of them. Their work is very difficult and hard, and being able to share the burden of that sometimes is very beneficial. I think of women that I've worked with that work with the Department of Children's Services, my friend Davine, and just like being able to just like talk to each other and talk about like different things we can try, but it's quite expensive to do that intensive case management.
When you say that, is this just like psychotherapy, counseling? What I mean, intensive management we're talking about a juvenile that's really been traumatized. Is that it?
Yeah, and we're talking about like you get these kids that are put in these youth detention facilities that you refer to Woodland Hills like being a lockdown school. If they're there and we've changed them, I mean, if you understand trauma, it creates chaos in the brain. And in order to settle the chaos, you have to have safety. Yeah. And safety only comes through stability. So if you have a kid that has a chaotic upbringing, and then they go into the detention center, and they get some consistency, they start to settle, then they're moved to a new facility, it starts over. You have to have consistency. That's one thing that we do. So in intensive case management, I'm talking about driving and visiting people and seeing them and maintaining consistency. There's a cost affiliated with that, and it's quite time consuming and very costly, and yes, that money would help a lot of agencies, not just Epic Girl.
Yeah, it's frustrating because that money's there to be had. Go ahead, ma'am. What were you going to say?
Oh, well, yes, and I agree with Stacia fully. Being able to have access to the girl, we have a lot of young girls who we meet with them, we build that relationship.
You have to go to them, right?
Yes, when they move, especially when they move like that. We have to be able to go to them, and we do that. We go. Stacia, I know she travels the interstate often. We have a girl who has moved to Memphis, and I was there, and I was able to provide services for her while I was there in Memphis. Yeah. So yes, we do. Intense case management is needed because it's that relationship. We model the example of a healthy adult-child relationship. So the goal is for them to mimic that.
And so you're that healthy adult then?
We're that healthy adult. A lot of them, yes. That's what we do. We're that healthy adult.
Show that this is the way it should be. And so we can try to give you an example.
Yes. We correct when it's time. We build a relationship in order to be able to say, hey, this is not appropriate. In a relationship, it's supposed to be reciprocation. It's not always gifts. But we build a relationship in order to be able, and we tell them we're not trying to take the place of a parent. We're like a professional friend or a professional cheerleader. That's what we say. But we build that relationship with them. We don't try to take the place of the mom or anything like that, but we try to be that example of what a healthy adult will look like in a child's life. And some of them catch on. Some of us call us and say, hey, how you doing? In the beginning, it's us checking in with them, sometimes weekly, sometimes every other day when we know that they may be going through something. But now, they'll go off to college. One girl who went off to college,
awesome.
We don't case manage as often then, but she reached out to me the other day like, hey, Miss Hancock, how you doing? And I didn't even know who she was, really. She's like, yeah, I'm in college now. And it was amazing because we actually knew someone. We had a mutual friend, and I was like, hey, that could be a support person for you while you're there in college. And she's like, I know them, they're great. And I'm like, yeah, they're good people, and I'll let them know that I know you.
Did you think she was going to go to college when you first dealt with her as a case? Did you have no? I mean,
I have hope.
You always have hope, right?
Yes,
but that's so great.
Yes, and I would like to believe that each one who say that they want to go to college, but the reality is not a lot of them are able to follow through with that because they do get caught up in family situations. They get caught up in community. They get caught up in a lot of peer stuff.
You have a lot of teen pregnancy? And so all of a sudden, if they're saddled with a child, which of course then their parent or mother, father has to help deal, that's got to be a huge burden as well. I mean, just taking care of a baby is a huge job by itself. So how do you guys handle that?
We try to connect them with resources that are specifically for that.
I don't see how she can work on getting her education. I mean, I know they do that, but I mean, initially the baby comes along, it slows things down, doesn't it? It can be done, but it slows things down.
We have several girls right now with babies. It makes it very difficult for them to complete their education. They're, you know, they can. And some of them do. Like, I have one girl that was one of the first girls that ever started with us, had a baby. She was 18, I think, when she had her baby. And she's doing so well, like working, gets a lot of support from her mom, and I think her dad is involved in her life as well. And so we do see success stories from that, but it does require a lot more, especially if they're really young, like, you know, 15 and a baby is sometimes, you know, just overwhelming.
Children having kids, you know, and that's
exactly.
I was just wondering, I figured that was part of the equation too they have to deal with. Let's take a call from Shay. Shay, good morning. Hi, Shay.
How you doing?
Good.
I just had a comment. I stay in public housing, and like she said, it's a lot of social workers that we need out here. They're taking away social workers, and then at the end of the day, activities is the biggest problem. There are not enough things for these kids to do. It's hard for a parent trying to pay rent and find extra activities for their kids to do, because obviously half of them cost money. There's not people sponsoring things anymore. I would love to see the police or somebody sponsor a basketball league again or a kickball team. Like, just give these kids something to do. Even behind the camera, it's plenty of things that they don't know that they can be able to do, and they have opportunities, but they just don't get that opportunity. So I see it's a lot of things that if they had something to do, I think it'll be a better outcome for these kids. And a lot of them have PTSD on top of that. When you hear gunshots every night, I will have post-traumatic stress because I go through it every night. And I appreciate y'all for what y'all doing. Thank you.
Shay, thank you for your call. Wow, she's right on point on that.
I mean, I watched a show, I think on CNN. It was one of those shows that they did about crime in Chicago, and they were talking about the funding that's been removed from a lot of the public housing areas where they don't have basketball anymore. They don't have things coming in.
Or like community centers where they could go and do things. See, a lot of that's been sucked away.
Yeah, I mean, we have Boys and Girls Club, and certainly that's a good opportunity for them as well. But I appreciate what she said, and I think another really important thing that she mentioned is PTSD and in the public housing units, and how a lot of people are suffering from that. And we did a study at Epic Girl early on and looked at some of the things that were affecting the kids and driving some of the outcomes we were seeing. And 100% of the girls that we questioned had at least one adverse childhood experience, and a lot of them pointed to gun violence and pointed to the fact that in a lot of their cultures, you know, they're not given the space to grieve and to really address that, and to really, I mean, they go to school and maybe their classmate was killed the day before, and they provide counselors, but they're still dealing with an empty seat, and that thought that creates that void. We know a lot of girls on our caseload that have lost brothers, sisters, best friends. One of my children, I feel like she's my child. Her best friend, you know, was killed in a gun violence incident. And I mean, I think Andrea could probably speak to that better than me, but it is something we really need to address as a community.
Yeah, PTSD, so it sticks with them. So these kids then are afraid because they've heard gunshots at night. What's crazy, for some of them, it's just become commonplace, right?
Yes,
They're
it
just
has.
used to it. It's like if you or I were to hear a gunshot in the middle of the night, I would pop up and go, what the heck, you know? And some of them now are to the point where they sleep through it because they hear it so often.
Yes. Well, I wouldn't say sleep through it. They have just been taught to just move on.
Okay, so they just they
like,
shield themselves off from it.
Yeah,
and, they
and
just,
so they become, you know.
Okay, so that's again a barrier that goes
but
up.
the body keeps the score.
Right. Okay.
We
You're
learn
right.
the body
right.
keeps the score.
And
So
okay.
we may not believe it affects us, but it does.
Is. Oh,
it is affecting us
absolutely it is.
some kind of way, and it may not show up then, but it may show up later on in certain behavior because associated with the gunshot is a death.
Oh yeah.
It's violence. So you may wonder why you fear going to the bus stop. You may wonder why this child is fearing being by herself. You know, why is there so much fear and anxiety about being outside? You know, it's other things that may come about, but you won't be able to associate it with. It's because it's constant gunshots in the community. There's been several deaths in the community. The child's been getting ready to go to school in the morning, walk outside, it's a dead body in the front yard. Just walk over it, going to go to school.
You've had cases like that.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
A
yes.
lot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
See, and you know,
Or the boyfriend was just shot for no reason. Just recently, I had to connect a young girl to services because her friend was shot, and in her words, for no reason, and was killed for no reason. So her best friend was just dead for no reason. I believe it was her boyfriend, but he was dead for just no reason. It was a child that was killed due to gun violence. But she didn't know what to do with those feelings.
all right. Listen, I'm going to ask how we deal with that in our final segment. We'll come back. We'll take more calls. But that's it's about as got to be as difficult as it gets. I can't imagine. We'll take a break and be back. Continue. We can take a few more phone calls if you'd like. 737-7587 and more with our fine guests right after this. Stay with us. Did you witness?